I was very impressed with the Wolves throughout this season. I did not expect them to keep up the winning that they were doing. You know, when they first got the number one seed, everyone was kind of making a big fuss about it. I was very skeptical of the Wolves. I wasn't really a big believer in them. I thought honestly that they would cave and kind of like reality would kind of just like show face, and then Minnesota would probably be struggling to get into the playoffs, maybe a play-in team, but they held fast. Anthony Edwards has arrived as an NBA superstar, in my opinion. He's been in the conversation as the face of the league. I call him '80s Michael Jordan and 2000s Kobe Bryant with the fro because he gives me that feel. But you look at this series, it's the final tally with it being 4 games to 1 doesn't really tell the whole story in my opinion. I know last night was an absolute blowout. The Mavericks had this in control by the first quarter. The game was over by then because Luka Doncic came out and said that this series is not going back to Dallas. We're not having it. We're going to end this right now. But if you look at the last this 5 game series that it ended up being, every game was close. Every game was really down to the wire, and it came down to which duo of superstars could close the deal better than the other. It ended up being Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, two of the best closers that we have in the NBA today. And Anthony Edwards at times looked like he was out there by himself without Karl-Anthony Towns, who was the other superstar on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that leads me into what went wrong in this series for the Wolves. After taking out the defending champion Denver Nuggets, you'd imagine that this would be like more of a 6, maybe 7 game series, but that ended up not being the case because of what I just mentioned. It wasn't so much the body of work throughout the game; it was clutch time. Which superstars did a better job of closing? I thought Minnesota defensively, there wasn't really much you could do with Luka. You tried putting length on him with Jaden McDaniels. You tried to put more strength on him with Anthony Edwards. Nothing really worked for you. Switching out on ball screens with Rudy Gobert, the 4-time defensive player of the year, that didn't work either. So it's only but so much you can do with a player that's good. But my biggest Achilles heel I had with the Minnesota Timberwolves that I said before the playoffs started was, where's the offense going to come from if it's not from Anthony Edwards and not from Karl-Anthony Towns? You saw that when Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards got in foul trouble, that the Wolves struggled to score. McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, they tried their best and everything, but you can see that the offense dramatically went down. And that'll happen when any team has their 2 best players go to the bench. But I worried about where the offense would come if one of them had struggled or if one of them were in foul trouble. The second main thing that I took from it, how you doing, Miss Jackie? Thank you for tuning in as always. The second thing that I noticed was Karl-Anthony Towns had a horrible series. He did not show up to help out Anthony Edwards at all. Virtually not a no-show, except I know he had a good game last night. What did he have here? I'm looking at the box score here. Yeah, last night, Karl-Anthony Towns had 28 points and 12 rebounds. That was probably one of his best games, if not the best game he played all series. But before that, he just looked like a virtual no-show. He looked like he really, he wasn't helping them at all. You look at the plus minuses, you can look at, and even though he had 28 and 12 last night, it took him 20 shots to get there, and once again, 106 from 3-point range. Karl-Anthony Towns fell in love with three-pointer when he should have been driving to the basket more, should have been posting up more, getting easier shots near the basket, and then bring his game out. He was doing a lot of outside in as opposed to inside out. And I think that really hurt Minnesota's offense because at times they would get stagnant. And, you're talking about Anthony Edwards going up against a very much improved Dallas Mavericks defense. To my surprise, I did not know Dallas became all of a sudden gotten that good at defense. I knew they could always score. I knew that with Luka and Kyrie, they would be formidable. But my biggest impression with Dallas was how great they've become defensively ever since they made that trade for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Adding Derrick Jones Jr. out there, another great athletic wing defender. They've become a much more complete team, and that spells trouble for anybody in the NBA. And that includes the Boston Celtics out there in the East. But that was the biggest thing for me. And then Rudy Gobert, there were times in this series where you couldn't play him. Like he was very much looked like a liability out there, both on offense and defense, because at times the game might get out of hand. Rudy Gobert isn't going to give you much offense, so you don't really want to have him out there. He really just like ends up taking up space, taking away from Karl-Anthony Towns and taking away from driving lanes. And defensively, there wasn't a whole lot he could do because just the matchup was just not favorable to him. Like I know he's again the 4-time defensive player of the year, but you keep switching him out on Kyrie and switching him out on Luka, it's not going to end well for Rudy Gobert. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't really care how good of a defender you are. You're not going to do well if you're a big that's switching out into a guard like a Luka or a Kyrie. And Minnesota did a lot of that, and it ended up hurting them a lot. So Minnesota has some questions that need to be answered. You wonder if Anthony Edwards can win and take that next step with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. So that's gonna be questions that the Minnesota front office is gonna have to answer.